Good afternoon. Today's day is the 1st of July, and it's a Monday here in UK. So this week we finally get the first of the eclipses, which will be the solar eclipse, which happens tomorrow. And hopefully you'll have got the chance to have a look at the video that I sent out with regarding eclipses in general and what they signify. So I'm not really going to go into a lot of depth on that on this particular one, but we will touch upon it. We'll also talk about Mars moving into Leo and also Saturn conjuncting the South Node. So obviously we are dominated this week by the eclipse, which happens tomorrow. So this forms part of a 3-act series of transits which happen with this Cancer Capricorn axis. It started with the first one in January, which was in Capricorn when the eclipses were there, and it will finish with the with the eclipses in Capricorn at the end of this year, which will be right in time for the Christmas holidays, which is absolutely superb timing for some good kick-offs there. So this one is the first one which is in Cancer, and this is the one which conjuncts the North Node. So this gives us the chance to see the opposite end of that seesaw. And this means that with the North Node being there, this is our waypoint into the future. So if you've been doing all the clearing and cleaning that goes along with the Capricorn stuff, which hopefully will have started for you, and that you've been doing the work that Saturn is asking you to do, which started happening in January, this will have led to you finding some space in your life to fill it with new things, which is what the Cancer and North Node, Cancer Sun and North Node stuff is wanting you to do. So it's asking you to think now about, now there are things that I have lost from my life, now that things that have changed in my life, where do I want to go? Where exactly do I want to be heading with this stuff? If I've been getting rid of relationships that no longer good for me, what sort of relationships do I want to bring in? And it's not just pie in the sky stuff either, because you've got to be thinking about, well, what actually fits. So if you can imagine, like, if you've cleared a room in your house ready to begin again, you've got to think about the space in that house that's going to be used. So, if it's a dark little room, then there's no point in putting dark coloured wallpaper on the walls, because it's going to make it look even darker. Or, if you have got, if you have got like the walls painted a certain colour, like if everything is blue in that room and you don't want to redecorate, well, what's the point in bringing a load of furniture that's, I don't know, bright red, for example, because that's not going to go. So now that you have discovered more about who you want to be and where you want to go, then you've got to think about, well, what actually matches up with that. So if it's relationships you've been getting rid of, and thinking about, well, relationships for me have never worked in that way before. Well, what sort of relationship do I want? What sort of relationships would actually work for me? And why did they go wrong in the first place with what happened before? I mean, it could be that you've just changed as a person, in which case, what are you now? What is it about you that's different? What is it about you that you don't want to tolerate now necessarily that you did before? So if you've not been very clear with your boundaries, for example, and somebody's been walking all over you and, pretty much using you as a doormat, and you said, right, I'm not wanting this person in my life anymore because that was too much. You know, there was nothing of me in it. It was just that other person. They just dominated everything. They took charge of everything, and there was no space for me. Well, it's like, well, now I want to have my chance, but obviously you don't want to swing it so that you just become the tyrant, and that, you know, that reverse relationship just stays the same type of relationship but in reverse. You've got to do, well, what would this new relationship look like? And if it is about the fact that I've had problems with boundaries before, well, what do I need to do to stop that happening again? So, you know, where are the lines that I want to draw in the sand? So, you know, if, for example, that you've ended up doing all the housework and things like that, it's like, well, you know, if I move in with somebody else next time, do we draw up rotas and say, right, Monday, Wednesday and Friday, I'll do the washing up and taking out the rubbish and all the rest of it, and then you do it on the other days. So that makes it fair and makes it even. Very formal as well, in a Saturnian sort of way, if you're making a list. But you know, it could be that you felt stifled in your responsibilities, again, which is a very Saturnian thing, and that you just want more freedom to be on your own, or to be with your friends, or to travel about a bit more. You know, this could be particularly true if, you know, the area of life is your career. You might want to have a job which has more variety in it, for example. But what does that variety look like? And how realistic is it at the moment? Because it could mean that, you know, you might have to retrain for something, or you might have to move area in order to get what you want in. So when this eclipse hits, that's the kind of thing that it's going to be churning up. And don't expect to have all the answers straight away, because this is not a one-step process. This is a process which will take time. And the thing that follows the eclipse and the solar eclipse, and will continue through to the lunar eclipse and beyond, is the fact that Mercury goes retrograde. So we've already begun the station stage of things, and we'll be getting into the actual retrograde next week. So as with all Mercury retrogrades, it gets you to look inward, rather than, the communication happens inside rather than outside of yourself. So it's reevaluating a lot of things, going back over certain things. So again, after this sort of madness of the eclipse that might stir up a lot of feelings and making you feel sort of malcontent about everything, you can then step back and allow the retrograde to do its job in helping you to rethink certain things, and to go over and make plans, and then decide which way that wants to go forward after the second phase of the eclipse has happened, after the full moon. So it's not something that needs to be rushed, but it's certainly something that you can begin to think about. And say, think about, well, what are your feelings that occur tomorrow, you know, and for those few days, sort of between Tuesday, Wednesday and Thursday, when, you know, you've got the real full effects of this eclipse. And so begin to unpack that and look forward to planting the seeds for your future. So interesting times. And I think it's good to write things down at these times when these feelings are happening, are at their height, so that you can, when things have calmed down and you maybe feel less emotional about these things, you can actually properly evaluate what that meant to you. So if that is crazy dreams that you've had, or just that you want to articulate the anger that you maybe feel, rather than taking it out on somebody else. And there will be a lot more sort of churning up later on this week and early next week, when Mars changes sign and then starts hitting that Uranus, and Mercury goes backwards. That's going to be the time when things could really sort of get heated and hit the fan, as it were. So yeah, as well as it being a good thing to sort of work through those feelings aspects of it, writing things down also helps you mark the passage of time and how things have changed for you, so that when we do get into the December Capricorn side again of this eclipse, you can actually see how far you've come, and you know, how different things look for you now, and if, having stepped back from the things that have happened around now in July, you know, where do you want to be next, and you know, could that have changed in those 6 months where you've had a chance to let things settle, to just settle in these areas of your life. So that's the eclipse for tomorrow. And the next one, like I say, is Mars moving into Leo, which, barring the stickiness of its early stages, is going to be quite a nice positive thing, because it moves away from this, the Mars moves away from this axis. I was going to say this axis of evil, and for some people it might feel like the axis of evil. So it's moving away from that, and it's sort of freeing itself up. And Mars likes space to move around. And it also, again, like when Mercury changed into being in Leo, it provides that breath of fresh air, and that almost joy. I think anything in a fire sign is very joyful, and gives you encouragement, particularly with it being Mars, and creativity and the ability to be able to express. So I always think of Mars in Leo, like the Mercury in Leo. It's about like kind of almost like a performance that you give, where you are the main attraction and taking centre stage. So looking for activities, looking for things to do which will distract you maybe from some of this Cancer Capricorn energy, particularly for those of you who do have a lot of cardinals in your chart. This Mars in Leo could be the welcome relief of some creative playtime, where you can put your energy into doing something completely different from all this heavy day job stuff that's going down. So the stickiness. So why is it sticky? Well, it's because almost straight away Mars will encounter Uranus in Taurus. So when you've got Mars and Uranus together, that kind of gives some nice fireworks that can go off. So it's beware of arguments, particularly when you've got Mercury joined in there, particularly as it's going backwards next week. You don't want to be saying things that you then later regret. It's saying, you know, just be careful about going too far with anything, or becoming a diva rather than a performer. So, you know, that's the thing with that that Mars in Leo and Mercury in Leo, is that, you know, as well as being this amazing performer which can bring joy, it can also go too far and be that diva who demands and who says, you know, I want it this way. So just be careful of that. Be careful of words that are said, particularly on the back of the eclipse. You might be feeling shaken up anyway, and just feeling a little bit more emotional than you would ordinarily be. So then encountering that Mars Uranus could just be the tipping point that could just send you over the edge into angry words. Also be careful around anything that may be slightly dangerous, or have some kind of risk involved in it, because obviously Mars and Uranus can cause problems in that direction. So if you're setting off fireworks, for example, for the 4th of July, make sure that you follow the instructions and that you stand well back once you've lit the touch paper, and that you don't in fact cause yourself any injuries or accidents as a result of playing with fire, as it were. Everybody loves the fireworks and say they're beautiful and creative and joyous, which is again a very sort of Leonian thing, but you have to be careful how you use them as well, just to make sure that you don't cause yourself any injuries in the process, or anybody else for that matter. So that's the Mars in Leo. And so once it's gone past that Mars has gone past that Uranus point next week. It's free to play then, and free to be happy and joyous, and stay away from all this heavy duty dark stuff that's in Cancer and Capricorn. Mercury, on the other hand, will be there going back for quite a while, and say eventually dipping back into Cancer later on in the month. As with any Mercury retrograde, be prepared. It's not some people think, oh, it's about battening down the hatches and not doing anything at all for a month. It's not about that at all. It's about just double checking everything, particularly paperwork, particularly if you're making any plans to do anything, if you're travelling around, make sure that you are taking into account any contingencies that might need to be made, in case you come across delays along the way. I travel around a lot with my job, and be the Gemini anyway, so Mercury retrogrades often affect me a lot more heavily than they do a lot of people. I always make sure I leave myself extra time during Mercury retrograde to get myself anywhere. I always make sure I check before I travel that the person I'm going to be travelling to is actually going to be there, which can be another thing which you can encounter when you've got Mercury retrograde. But you say, just be checking things. Don't sign anything that you shouldn't be signing in a rush. Always make sure you get everything double checked, which particularly things that are legal and binding. Don't buy it. The whole rule about don't buy any new electrical things, because otherwise you'll always have trouble with them during a retrograde phase, and even going through into the shadow phases. For example, don't buy a car. You'll have nothing but trouble with it if you do during this period of time. But Mercury retrogrades can be incredibly useful, and again, as a Gemini myself, I find them useful because often the communication is often so focused outwards and onto other people, you don't get that chance to reflect. And I think that the Mercury retrogrades give you a perfect opportunity to reflect and to check back and make sure that how you're feeling and thinking is the same as is being perceived. So sometimes you can say things that other people take it in the wrong way. So it's about checking back in, making sure that everything's okay before then moving forward. It's also like a good chance. I mean, I said don't batten down the hatches and stay away from the world, but it's a good chance to actually do spend some time by yourself and again write things down, diary things, anything that's kind of any inward reflection can be really positive at this time. Just going through the process can be enough to actually make you see things more clearly. So if you've had a lot of things to deal with and a lot of events have been happening and it's been bang, bang, bang kind of thing, just having that time to sit back and write about it and think, oh yeah, now that makes sense to me now that I've had a chance to reflect. And I often find the process of just writing things can give me a new perspective on them. So give it a try, see how you feel about doing those things. And finally, the bookend for this week is that Saturn hitting the South Node. So back to the reverse side of that piece, and clearing out, shutting down, finishing off, purging things again. So things that again that got stirred up at the beginning of the week, you might decide, right, it's end of by the end of the week. It's time to progress with those things. If that's just about doing a ritual cleanse on something, getting rid of a bunch of old paperwork that you might have had sitting around for a long time, and you want to go through those and just finish those off. So clear out your room, clear out the garage, clear out your wardrobe. Just, just see where you've outgrown things and things no longer work for you. And that's a good way to get through that sort of Saturn South Node energy that is at the end of the week. And so that will then open up even more space to fill it with those new things that have come about from that Cancer piece at the beginning of the week, which saw you looking forward and where you want to be heading. So it's going to be tricky. It's not going to be the easiest of weeks, but you will get through it just the same as you do every other week. Just because it's heavy doesn't mean to say that it's going to be the end of the world. Everything is finite, everything changes constantly. So this is just another piece of that. Yes, it might be heavier and more relentless because it's been going on for months now and will continue to carry on for months. But these changes, yes, they might shake us to our core, but they open up the opportunities for us to go from caterpillars to butterflies and turn into our true selves. So that's my forecast for this week. Let me know any thoughts on it. Yes, take care, look after yourselves and those people who you love during this week. And, make sure that you're telling people that you love, that you do indeed love them, so that they know and you can share those good things as well as the bad. Okay, signing off for this week. See you later. Bye.